Good evening, YouTube. Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. I'm decided today that I'm gonna do a tropical outlook because there's some very interesting stuff going about, and I've been looking at a few ensembles, and I actually tend to agree with it. So, that being said, we're gonna go over here on this channel. So, if you live towards the Gulf Coast in particular, you might want to watch this because this does very much include you. So make sure you're hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, also hitting that share button as well, because this is some pretty interesting info. A few changes have been made, and while I don't necessarily have the graphic up at the moment, we're expecting hurricane season to maybe get a little bit more active. Not so much in the number of storms, but maybe the intensity may change. Now, this is just hearsay, keep that in mind, but I've heard that maybe an extra major hurricane would be possible. Now, let's keep in mind that this still would have to hit land in order to truly be impactful, but especially towards the Gulf of Mexico over here, we have to be extra watchful. So, like I said, if you live anywhere along the Gulf here, whether you're in Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida here, or Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, just wherever, anywhere across this particular area. I don't have Epic Pen on here yet, so I apologize for that. I'm still trying to get this computer up and running. But anywhere up in this region here where I'm throwing the cursor around, you need to be keeping an extra close eye on the tropics over the next couple of months here, because some things are about to change with the pattern here, which may make things more favorable for development. Also, let's not forget about the Eastern Pacific, where things are pretty active actually right now. We have a tropical storm Calvin heading off to the west here, and this is actually on a beeline for Hawaii here. I don't expect it to be a super impactful storm at the moment, but we're going to get into that in just a minute. Then we also have this little area of disturbance here with a 20% chance of development within the next several days. If it can hold up, this could end up being our next named storm. I have to look at the list for the Pacific region, so I have to. I'm gonna have to take a little second here. So this next storm would be named Dora if it does develop. Right now, 20% chance, not very high at the moment, but this could easily change here. Wind pattern over here is a little bit more favorable. There is like a little pocket just ahead of where this storm storm system is expected to go. This area of disturbance. Now let's go over to the Central Pacific, and we actually can look at the graphic here. And here's Calvin. Calvin's at 50 miles an hour. At one point, it was a major hurricane or close to it, but this ended up weakening heavily as it got into a less favorable environment. But we can expect this to make a close pass or maybe even a landfall on one of the Hawaiian islands here. Now, as far as its strength is concerned, I wouldn't expect this to be beyond where it is right now as far as a tropical storm is, as far as like being a tropical storm or hurricane. We'll get into the details of that a little bit more, but we're mainly hanging around at 50 miles an hour, and as time goes on, this will weaken further, regardless of whether it makes landfall over the Hawaiian Islands or not. This is going to end up weakening into a tropical depression by Thursday, and then we probably will see it go extra tropical by that point as well. So that's what we have going there. As far as impacts are concerned for Hawaii at the moment, there is a decent chance of tropical storm force winds within the next few days. Not a super high probability right now. When you look at the graphic here, you're only seeing at best maybe 20, probably to 30% chance at the moment. The wind field is very small because the storm, of course, is weakened. If we actually look at it on satellite here, which we're about to do now, it's nothing crazy here. So we'll go ahead and take a closer look at it. And look, it's definitely been sheared apart by wind shear. You can almost kind of tell because of how decrepit the eye looks. Just a better look at it with a still shot image here. And here's the same graphics as well. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the spaghetti models now. And of course, we know that it's going to be heading close to Hawaii, and then after that, fizzling out. As far as intensity is concerned, this is a little bit behind here, but we're definitely on the down trend here for sure, because this was right around the 14th. I don't know what's going on with Cyclocane. It's usually a good website, but it seems like they might be having some technical issues at the moment. Hopefully they get that resolved soon. I actually recommend this site. But this is about where we are right now. I can't tell exactly when they last had an update on here, which really sucks. But for the most part, most of the spaghetti tracks here have the storm actually missing still. So there's good news to be had there. We'll see if anything changes. I might make a few posts on the page, on the community page, so keep an eye on that, especially if you know anyone in Hawaii. Another story to talk about here, also with the tropics, will be Typhoon, and I gotta find it. Typhoon Talim. Typhoon Talim has made landfall today in China, and is doing its fair share of damage here. Since I don't really have too much access to this area here, I don't quite know how severe it is, but it was a pretty strong storm just before it made landfall. Hopefully it did weaken, because we hate to see people get impacted by devastating storms. But nonetheless here, it was pretty strong, and we'll probably try to post updates where we can here as well. Also, hello to anyone from China that ends up happening to see this. But as far as things are concerned with the Atlantic outside of dawn, nothing really going on. We know our situation over here towards the Eastern Pacific. And other than that, there's not really much more to talk about at the moment. So let's go ahead and now take a look at the wind shear over these next couple of areas here. So this is over the Eastern Pacific. This is the look at the GFS ensemble. And from what we can see here, I'm actually going to go ahead and just manually do this. But you can see that there's this little pocket right here, and that's what allows these storms to develop. Because if once it gets into this heavier wind shear, kind of just like how Calvin did, these storms are going to be torn apart, and they're going to become just more or less just disgruntled looking, so to speak, or decrepit. I guess that might be the better term, or for lack of better term, decrepit. And this is what in turn will end up dooming the storm from really developing any further. But that's what we have going on over in the Eastern Pacific. If we were to look at the chances of new pieces of energy flying off of this area, no real surprises here. We'll backtrack it just to make sure, but we can clearly see that there's several points of interest here. So, especially once you start to see this turning yellow, that's when things get interesting. Also, here's an interesting area right here that I'm seeing as we get towards the end of March. We'll get into the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic in just a second here. In fact, that's going to be what we talk about in just a moment here. Oops. Wait, something's wrong here. Okay, I had to fix that here. I don't know why that ended up going back towards the Atlantic here. I wasn't ready for that just yet. Still glitchy, but here's what we have going at the moment. Pretty much a similar deal with the European ensemble here. It's a small pocket where we could see storms develop right here. Interesting thing to note here is the wind shear is a little bit more pushed off to the west here, so this could allow for additional storms to develop here too. So definitely need to be keeping an eye on those. But nonetheless, as far as things as a whole, it's not going to be too much different from the GFS here. So here we are now. Pretty similar deal across the board, especially as time goes on. More pieces of energy flying off of the Panama Canal, it looks like, in particular. And the confidence starts to increase as time goes on. Also, like I said, we have to watch the Gulf too, because some of these storms can make impact on eastern Mexico, come out of western Mexico, and then work their way into the Eastern Pacific. So mainly I would be more so concerned about Hawaii. I don't see any particular tracks or directional veering that would put this towards West Mexico at the moment. Of course, things are prone to changing, so I'll be keeping an eye on this. Let's go back now. Let's go to the Atlantic. And here's something I want you to make very close note of here, especially towards the Gulf of Mexico. This is the Gulf right here. Here's our high pressure. This is what's been keeping us somewhat protected from tropical development, because these areas in the red, that's high wind shear. You don't want high wind shear if you're looking for tropical development. It's different from a tornado where you're looking for pretty strong wind shear. Whereas with this, you want as little wind shear as possible. And you can see right now, there's a decent bit of wind shear, but it's starting to weaken just looking at it even now. So as we continue to go through the month here, there is a corridor here that seems to open up here. If any storms were to form across this region here, and the winds continue to lighten up, there could be some trouble here. And actually, from what we're seeing here, that does start to become the case, especially as we end out the month and start to sneak our way into August. So I do have my share of concerns for this area here. Can't guarantee that anything crazy will happen, but let's not rule it out. It is hurricane season after all, and it really just takes one storm for a season to be memorable. We only had a handful of storms last year, and that was forecasted to be an extremely active hurricane season. So again, like I said, let's make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do here. And then it's pretty much the same thing with the European ensemble. We have a decent wind shear here at first, and then as time goes on, starts to weaken, direction starts to change a little bit, and if anything, it starts to become a little bit more favorable with development here, especially as we start to sneak in to August from the end of July. So definitely need to be keeping an eye on these areas. So again, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the ensemble members here. This shows the chance of a low pressure area developing, and anything that forms overseas can of course turn into a tropical system. We do see this area over here towards the main development region that starts to go a little bit hotter. These storms I'm not so concerned about, because they're going to be running into high wind shear, but as time goes on, maybe one of these could slip through the pockets here and maybe get something going. The high pressure that sets up here, this is interesting because this could weaken wind shear just a little bit. So if these storms were to form a little further to the north, we could have something there as well. So like I said, we're going to have to keep an extra close eye on this. And these storms will have to stay weaker. If they strengthen heavily over the main development region, they're going to be pulled into this area of high pressure, because the storms will have grown to a point where they'll actually end up in that directional wind shear and be pulled out to sea. But as time goes on here, I do see a couple areas of interest for right now. Like I said, it's really far out to tell, so I don't know how soon or if it would happen at all. But definitely something to keep a close eye on. And we'll do the same thing with the euro. And it's going to be a pretty similar deal here. I need to rewind this back. But like I said, pretty obvious what we have going on here starting out. As time goes on, pretty similar deal. Little pocket over here opens up towards the main development region. And if any of these storms can stay especially south of Hispaniola here, and more so towards Jamaica and Cuba, it could get interesting. I think the closer you are to the Gulf, the higher the threat is for tropical development. And the other reason that I'm so heavily concerned about the tropics over towards the Gulf is the overall temperature. Look at this. We're nearly maxed out as far as surface temperature in degrees Celsius as far as the water is concerned. To put it in perspective, at 29 degrees, that's 84 degrees Celsius. Or 84 degrees Fahrenheit, excuse me. I got my metrics mixed up. But 29 degrees Celsius is about 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And all across the board here, if you look at this, we see that this red color right here, and that's getting close to about 30 plus degrees. At about 33, if I remember correctly, is close to 100. So With these sea surface temperatures boiling like this, with a lack of wind shear, this could become a problem. Not trying to scare anybody, but it is time to maybe start getting ready to be prepared well in advance. The sooner you do it, the better off you may be. This does not mean clear out all the milk and butter in the store. This does not mean go ahead and get every sandbag that you can and put it in front of your house. But let's keep an eye on the tropics. That's simply all this means. But anyway, this is the end of the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. You found it useful. If you did, you know what to do. Hit that like button. Smash that subscribe button. Make sure you get the bell on if you do subscribe, especially if you're new. And then also hit that share button. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But this has been Ty Metalhead Weatherman. I hope you guys have a good night and hope to see you back on here soon. Until then, take care.